Well, the viciousness will never stop. The Democrats don't seem to want to bring forth a program that will help people. They don't seem to want to talk about what their plan is to improve the status of people in America. All they want to do is hurt the president. And if you can believe it, dozens and dozens of subpoenas, dozens of committees are just all yamming for the same thing. Well, we've got to get the president's tax returns. We've got to have him have the unredacted Mueller report. We want to breach the law that we have passed and to force a grand jury testimony to be made public. It goes on, and they say, quote, it's a constitutional crisis. But President Trump said it's a bunch of hot air, and I'm not going to budge. Angus Strong has that story.
It's a week of deadlines and subpoenas for the Trump administration as the stalemate between Congress and the White House drags on.
He's going to be defeated. He has to be defeated.
According to the Washington Post, Dems on the Hill slapping the Trump administration with nearly 20 investigations and at least 79 document requests. So far, no luck from the White House. Democrats say there are other ways of getting what they want.
If you find someone $25,000 a day to their person, until they comply, it gets their attention.
The administration is staring down a pair of deadlines this week. First, the Department of Justice faces a subpoena for the full unredacted Mueller report on Wednesday. And the Treasury Department is looking at a subpoena for the president's tax returns on Friday. Democrats calling the administration's failure to turn over the goods a constitutional crisis.
We saw it last week in the Barr hearing. We're seeing it in terms of a failure to comply with subpoenas. There is a failure to respect the significance of Congress's duty.
President Trump's on the defense, saying the only crisis here is the Democrats' refusal to work. His GOP counterparts contend it's all politics at play.
The bottom line is we spent $35 million investigating the president. Their conclusion was there was no underlying crime. This is absurd, and the American people know it.
Some of the shots are coming from within the GOP. The Republican-led Senate Intel Committee serving Donald Trump Jr. with a subpoena to testify based on statements from Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen.
Donald Trump Jr. has spent 27 hours already testifying. They're requesting him back based upon something that Cohen has said when he is in jail for lying to Congress.
Republicans say if there are going to be investigations, it's time to look into the origins of the entire ordeal.
We'll look at the Clinton investigation. Was she let off because of a political bias? We're going to look at the counterintelligence investigation, the FISA warrant.
Now, when it comes to hearing from special counsel Robert Mueller, that's still up in the air. Democrats were hoping to hear from the special counsel this week, but now say they're convinced it's going to happen eventually. Amber Strong, CBN News in Washington.
Doesn't it make you sick? It does me. I wish that these people would work to make the country better. That's what they're in office for. They're not in office just to get political points. And as Adam Schiff said, well, the president has got to be defeated. Well, is the FBI in business of trying to defeat the president? We've got testimony to that effect. I think it's time to clean house in the Justice Department, to clean house with the FBI, to clean house with all these people. And I think Lindsey Graham is right when he talks about what they need is a thorough investigation. If they want to have one, let's look at the stuff that was done before. And it's sickening. But this is the greatest country on earth, and if we don't stop tearing ourselves apart, I want to quote it again, what Jesus said, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. We will destroy this country if that kind of stuff continues. Well, was it from Iran? Who did the job? Saudi officials say 2 of its oil tankers were sabotaged off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. Ephraim Graham has more on that.
Pat, one of the tankers was on its way to pick up Saudi oil for delivery to the United States. The UAE says at least 4 ships were targeted near the port city of Fujairah. Officials did not give more information on the damages or who may have carried out the attacks. However, the news comes hours after Iranian and Lebanese media aired false reports on explosions at the port. The U.S. has warned Iran might be targeting ships in the region, last week announcing it's deploying an aircraft carrier to the Persian Gulf to deal with possible threats from Tehran. Stock futures took a steep drop after China announced it's imposing tariffs on $60 billion in U.S. imports starting June 1st. The tariffs increased from 10 to 25% on $200 billion in Chinese goods. President Trump also called for higher tariffs on about $300 billion more in Chinese imports. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow told Fox News Sunday, among other sticking points, China has to stop stealing American intellectual property and technology.
We don't think the Chinese have come far enough. How long does it take? I don't know. It could be a couple of months, thereabouts.
Kudlow also said both China's economy and U.S. consumers will suffer from the tariffs. President Trump is expected to meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Japan. That'll happen next month. Pat?
Well, none of us want a trade war with China, but the president is figuring it this way. If they can beat tariffs, there'll be something that he has as a lever to force Chinese government from stealing American property. What they do, if anybody wants to do business in China, they have to turn over all the intellectual property to the Chinese government. We also have Chinese hackers, Chinese cyber terrorists dealing on a massive scale against the United States. I don't think there's a major company in America or a defense industry entity that hasn't been hacked by Chinese cybersecurity people. And I think it's time that we force the Chinese, and that's what these tariffs are all about. The Chinese economy can't stand this. They can huff and puff all they want to, but they can't stand the pressure that's being put on them. It's not doing us any good either. It's hurting our farmers, hurting others. But a trade war is not something anybody wants, and it would be a very painful thing. But what the president is trying to do is to get a lever, just some lever, to force the Chinese to behave themselves in international conduct. Ephraim.
Uncertainty over China, the U.S. economy is chugging right along. One economic expert told CBN News employment numbers have not been this strong since the Beatles were in their heyday. Ben Kennedy sat down with Stephen Moore for details.
The latest numbers show the economy is in a pretty good place with a steady state of growth. Now, this news contradicts critics who feel the U.S. is headed towards a recession. The latest government figures estimated that the economy grew at a 3.2% rate in the first quarter, far better than expectations and good news after concerns about a slowdown following a strong 2018.
It's a really healthy economy, almost nothing to complain about.
Steve, talking about the wage numbers, unemployment is at a rate so low that we have not seen since December 1969. Why is that?
Yeah, that's when the Abbey Road album came out. That's how long ago it was. Employers are hiring. Every business, I talk to, whether it's from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine, they say business conditions are good.
Turns out the government shutdown didn't hurt the economy like some predicted.
Strong growth, low unemployment, no inflation.
The unemployment rate is down 3.6%, the lowest in nearly 50 years.
I think you've got to tip your hat to Donald Trump and say thank you for this strong economy.
But what do you say to people who say, look, this is because of President Obama's economic policies?
Well, when we came in, the economic growth rate was 1.5. So we were limping along. And a lot of people thought a recession was right around the corner. And now we've got the economy firing on all cylinders with a growth rate twice as high.
It's that kind of growth that could propel votes for Trump in 2020.
Democrats are going to try to poo-poo the economy, but it's hard for them to do it. I mean, the polls are now showing between 70 and 80% of Americans feel the economy is in really good shape. People don't vote against prosperity, and that's what we have right now.
But we've been losing $800 billion on trade. $800 billion. We're going to stop that.
Some economists warn, however, that the effort to reduce the trade imbalance with China could throw a wrench in the economy. Now, is the China tariff hurting the economy overall?
A little bit.
Okay,
a little bit.
It is.
The big deal now for the economy is whether Trump can get this trade deal done.
Another key will come next year when Americans weigh in on the economy then against the upcoming presidential election. It could swing voters one way or the other. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
Another big issue at the ballot box is abortion, with passion on both sides. Pro-lifers showed their strength in Philadelphia this weekend after vicious verbal attacks on pro-life advocates by a Pennsylvania lawmaker. More than 1,000 pro-lifers showed up where the attacks took place to say they will not be silenced or they're not giving up the fight for the unborn as well. Paul Strand was there.
Hundreds came here to protest a Pennsylvania state representative's recent verbal attacks against pro-life sidewalk counselors outside this Philadelphia abortion clinic. Brian Sims put out a video of himself blasting a woman who was merely praying outside the clinic.
An old white lady telling people what's right to do with their bodies. Shame on you. Shame. Shame. Shame on you. There's no faith that tells you you are right and everybody else is wrong.
Sims then basically offered a bounty for information on 3 teenage girls praying here.
A bunch of pseudo-Christian protesters who've been out here shaming young girls for being here. And so here's the deal. I've got $100 to anybody who will identify any of these 3.
The pro-life advocates who came to this clinic told CBN News they won't be intimidated or stopped because abortion must be fought.
We are not going to continue to be bullied as pro-lifers. I am sick of this idea that just because we are Christians, we cannot stand up and defend ourselves, that we cannot stand up and defend our unborn brothers and sisters.
We need to be able to be out there and offer alternatives to these women going in.
We are calling on State Representative Brian Sims and all those who dare to harass and violate the First Amendment rights of the constituents here in Philadelphia to step down.
Sims accuses the pro-lifers of targeting and hurting women. But one lady told CBN News from personal experience it actually hurts women if they're not warned about the physical and mental impact an abortion can have on them.
If anybody's ever had an abortion, including myself, have. So first of all, unless you've had one, I don't really think you have the right to talk about it because you don't know the experience. And quite frankly, most people who have wouldn't wish it on their worst enemy because the emotional aftermath never leaves you.
National pro-life leaders came here to call on Sims to stop trying to shame women and girls who are exercising their rights. They say the real shame is the 61 million lives lost since the Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion. That's why they and countless others are going to continue to pray and counsel outside here and other clinics all across the country. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from outside the Elizabeth Blackwell Planned Parenthood in Philadelphia.
And the right to protest is indeed theirs. Pat?
I think that legislators should be taken out of office, frankly. It's shocking what he did. He's offering a bounty to identify Christian women who are praying outside of an abortion clinic, praying, and he wants to give a $100 bounty for people to identify them. Come on. What kind of a legislator is that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it may be this year's going into the record books as one of the wettest in history. It is unbelievable how much water is falling. The Mississippi is flooding. Various other levees are being breached. New Orleans is under a state of emergency, and Houston is once again being flooded. And we had a flood warning here in this area yesterday.
Tornado warnings, right?
Well, of course, we had a big tornado warning, but after that was a flood warning last night. The night before was tornado. But the water has just been pouring down, especially in the west. So here's Ephraim with a full report on that.
Pat, millions of residents along the East Coast were hit overnight with heavy rain and damaging winds. A suspected tornado tearing up trees and damaging homes in Suffolk, Virginia, and flash floods in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana forced first responders to make rescues and to wade through chest-high waters. Meteorologists say if rain and flooding continues at this rate, Baton Rouge, Louisiana could break the record for the longest river flood event since 1927. The storm system is expected to move north, hitting areas from Washington, D.C. to Boston. This past weekend, thousands of royals got the chance to don their cap and gowns, shake Dr. Pat Robertson's hand, and officially become members of the class of 2019. Regent University hosted its graduation, and here are some of the highlights from this year's commencement.
This past Saturday, thousands of family and friends gathered to recognize Regent University's class of 2019. Founder and Chancellor of Regent, Dr. Pat Robertson, offered words of wisdom for the graduates.
And what I'm telling you today is honor the Lord with the magnitude of your request. Don't be afraid. Move boldly. Dream big dreams. Have big plans.
Regent has 10 schools with 130 fields of study through traditional and online classes. Currently, students from 90 countries are pursuing undergraduate and graduate degrees. The keynote speaker was renowned global business leader, author, and philanthropist Ken Eldred.
Take the diploma you received today for a job well done. Add to it the understanding of your purpose and step into it. Then the Lord will make your life not just good, but truly great.
Outstanding student Lauren Dennis offered this encouragement to her fellow classmates.
Greatness is service. Only in a life of dedicated service will we be moldable enough to be pushed into the moments where we can be used for such a time as this. Thank you.
And finally, the moment everyone was waiting for.
Congratulations, you may now flip your tassels.
2,200 graduates from so many different disciplines. And the theme is Christian leadership to change the world. And we have an outstanding group of graduates. They're making their mark all over the world. And now we've got about 37,000 graduates.
And many of them in key positions. It's really wonderful.
Absolutely. We have 10 university presidents, college presidents. We have 2, I think, chancellors of universities. And we have hundreds and hundreds of teachers. And I can go down the list of the compliments. It is just extraordinary. So in any event, if you're interested, more information is 866-910-7615. That's the number. It's Regent EDU, and I tell you, they're enrolling again for this you can enroll 8 times a year, as a matter of fact. It's not semesters anymore. It's not fall and winter like it used to be. It's 8 times. So they'll be enrolling right now as we're speaking.
Mm-hmm. Great time. And come visit. It's so pretty here right now.
It's gorgeous,
It really
gorgeous.
is. Everything's
All right.
blooming.